Welcome to a room full of pros and cons with your hosts, John Askew and Tim Stark.
So I thought that we would start with AA Meeting, which is your group with Activa, or Activia, I always get that wrong, which began releasing music last year, I believe, and there was the Dream State performance. So in terms of the project as a whole, what are you seeing in the future for that?
Tricky one. We had really big plans for AA Meeting in 2019 when it first started. We, well, actually, my second album, I think you said that was 2008. I ought to know that, but I don't know when it was. But 2008, there was an AA Meeting track on there. There's a breakbeat track on there, which is under the name AA Meeting, Activa and I. And so we'd always talked about reigniting the name and doing something with it. 2019, we started doing it. We started posting a couple of videos online, and then Insomniac in America came forward and said, we want to book you to play at Dream State SoCal. And they put an offer on the table, and we went back and said, well, no, that we can't do it because it's us playing live. There is no material. Like, we would have to have 9 months of non-stop studio time to make the material to be able to do it. And it's not just us making a track and it being finished. It's making all the components of a track to be able to play it live. It was pretty complicated for us who had never done that before. And so Jeff from Insomniac called and said, what's it going to take to get this over the line? I gave him a number. He agreed to it. And then we did fucking really knuckle down to make 16 tracks and figure out how to play live. We spent a shitload of time putting it together and rehearsing it. And then we did the show. And then COVID came along, and we sort of, lost all sense of enthusiasm. We've been releasing tracks for the last 3 or 4 years, I think, but right. we lost enthusiasm for it. We ended up doing, our own individual things. And then after COVID, when the demand came back, we've started to take on some gigs. Like, we're playing Transmission in Bangkok coming up in October. We're doing Captured Festival in Malta in September. And we're now toying with the idea of putting together an album maybe for releasing next year, which would be an amalgamation of some new material and these tracks that we played at Dream State, which don't exist because once we played them live, that's it. It's done. There is no finished record.
So if you had to pick one hat for John Askew to wear for the next, we'll be brutal and say 10 years. Yeah. DJing, management, producing, gun to your head, which would you pick?
Money, no object?
Oh, yeah. Let's throw that in.
Okay. I would, if I won the lottery and I could just retire with no money, or I could just do what I wanted to do, I would just be in the studio making music all day, every day.
Right. So, I mean, you've got a number of labels, that are in play. Is there room for more still over the looking forward?
Not with my current workload, but if circumstances change, then definitely. I've actually signed quite a lot of techno, and I don't have a label to put it on. There is no home for it. I would love to have a straight up techno label. So, yeah, I'd love to start another label, but right now my workload is just impossible to comprehend. So, yeah, I'd love to do another label.
So after DJing for 30 years, is there anywhere you've not played or country you've not played that you'd like to tick off the list?
There's a lot of Latin America that I've not played that I would love to play. I have a very good relationship with Argentina and with Mexico. They're probably the two countries that I love playing the most, which leads me to believe that surely there's a lot more to be uncovered in the context of the music I make being compatible with other parts of Latin America. The crowds there are so passionate. They're so up for it. They party like it's their last night on the planet. They just really go to they go crazy dancing to the music, and I'd like to experience more of that beyond those two countries, which are currently my absolute favorite places to play. So I would love to go to Brazil, which I've never played.
Any particular club?
Warung, I'd love to play. It looks spectacular, although it burnt down and now it's been rebuilt. It doesn't quite look the same, but it's a legendary club. I don't know whether they would have me there, but I would love to play Warung. Yeah, I mean, Latin America.
Latin America. So where do you see Seven in 7 years' time? There we go.
Constantly evolving, refreshing the lineups. We yes, we are seven individuals, but we evolve that every so often. We've just now got Nifra has joined Seven, which is great. She's absolutely amazing. Her sound is somewhere between techno and really hard driving tech trance. It's just so powerful, and it's actually a sound that wasn't represented in Seven previously. So we're very excited about that. I think just evolving, always putting out cutting edge music that is, pushing things forwards at a time when a lot of the rest of the trance scene is focused on, making bootlegs of 90s tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The pandemic, as you refer to it.
Yeah.
Do you see that starting to kind of like ebb away, or is there just still too much material there for people to pounce on? And
I think it's prevalent across the board in trance, in techno, in house. It's making bootlegs of old records or official, unofficial, whatever remixes of old records is just where it's at the moment.
does seem to have been going on a long time though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a big thing going on in the US, which I call spring break techno, which I'm really not a fan of. I really don't like that sound, and but it's huge. It
Does
does
it have you fearing for techno as a whole, or is it so different?
I don't fear for anything. I just think it's evolution of music. You can't fight these things. You can't say, "Oh, you can't do that."
True.
People who put rules and regulations on music don't understand music. Music is about there not being any rules. It's just about creativity. But if we go back to your question about where I see Seven going, I always want Seven to be focused on the music of tomorrow, not the music of yesterday.
And what is the kind of the connection between Seven and Stadium artists? Because there's some overlap there, isn't there?
Stadium's just a shell to operate under. So it's just like a company that
Empty vessel.
Yeah. Essentially, it's just a shell that all of the different businesses feed through.
Right.
There's nothing more to it than that. So Seven
It's a legacy for your children. They know where to find you.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So Deep in Thought shifted its music policy towards the end of the pandemic. In terms of plan-wise, was that always the way you saw it going, or was that just a reaction to what you were receiving, hearing, what was playing well?
The label started as a vocal trance label. We released quite a lot of big records that were successful. And then it sort of ran out of steam because there weren't enough good demos coming in. There were a lot of demos coming in, but they were all pretty average or just run of the mill, heard it a million times before. There's nothing new. So, the schedule went down from releasing, 14 a year to not many. And then I just sort of lost interest in it, I think, for a little bit. And then when I wanted to restart the label last year, I just wanted to make it free flowing, no genres, If I want to release a pumping trance record or a hard as nails techno record or a gabba record or a drum and bass record, I'm just going to release it. So it's now just my label for releasing anything that I get sent that I absolutely love.
Right.
So there's no genres. And I think
That's transformed into freeform, basically.
Yeah, and I think that's conducive to what kids like now when they go out. If you go and see someone like Ben Hemsley playing, you know, the BPM range in his sets just goes up and down and up and down. He'll play, you know, 130 to 170 and up and down. And there's no kids these days just don't give a fuck about genres or BPMs or it's not about that. It's just about good music. So that's what I want people to perceive Deep in Thought as. It's just a good electronic vessel for high energy music.
John Askew has basically been, hard has been the calling card for 30 years. If you look forward another 5 years or 10 years, do you ever see any necessity for that to change? Likelihood that would change?
No.
Yeah.
In fact, I've now started, a few years ago, started a new alias called Nothing But Rockets, which is even harder. You know, that's more 160 beats per minute, purely taking the records that DJ Dag used to play that I loved in that era that I was playing as well in the mid 90s, and remixing them and reworking them to make them more compatible to a modern production sound. So no, I don't see any need to, or any desire or any want to stop playing the sound and the music I love. And I know that's a lot of DJs as they get older, their BPMs and everything comes down slower as they get older. But it's just like, you know, if you're metal, you're metal.
I mean, do you is there a little bit of that kind of rock and roll, you know, kind of like influence in there? You know,
for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think you also owe it to your fans and followers.
Yeah, that's what you've given them for the last 30 years because that's what's come from your heart. You know, to change now would be, you know, dereliction of duty.
I've said this many times before, but I don't want to go to a Metallica concert and hear fucking Bon Jovi records. I want heavy metal. Yeah. I that's what you are. You know, when I buy that ticket, there's an understanding in that transaction, and it's not a conscious decision as that reference might, you know, suggest. I'm not doing it for any business reasons. I'm doing it because that's the music I love, and I'm not going to stop loving it because I fucking love it.
And the crowds respond to it.
Yeah.
So with a kind of more broader view out onto the, you know, wearing a industry cap, you know, management cap, what do you see as being the trends that are likely to kind of like come into the industry over the course of the next 3 to 5, let's say?
Well, right now, I'd say the biggest stuff in terms of ticket sales is the hard techno scene with people like Clan Kunstler, Sarah Landry, who just did main stage at Tomorrowland, you know, 44 Label Group, all of those guys, you know, it's become the new EDM. I Hate Models. It's the mashup of different styles within that music that's hard and fast, and it's sort of a little bit punk rock. It was the, you know, the explosion of these ginormous big ticketed events that came out of COVID. A lot of that and the sort of fuck you attitude that sort of projected in at those parties almost comes from a similar standpoint that the punk movement in the 70s did, in the respect that these are all the jilted generation that had 2 years of their life taken away from them during COVID. And so I would say hard techno is currently in Europe as big as EDM ever was. It's huge. The amount of tickets they're selling is fucking crazy. And then the other big trend is remixing old classics, bootlegs of old classics. And I don't think the bubble for that is going to burst for some time. Just regurgitating old material, you know, putting a new kick and bass line and a new riff on top of it and releasing it, re-releasing it, and actually catalog in general, music catalog is now such big business that if you own a catalog of loads of old hits, you know, it's just about picking up the phone constantly and saying yes, no to all these opportunities of people who want to clear samples.
It's passive income, but
It's huge. It's huge business, and I represent artists, so I'm doing sample clearances all the time, and the amounts of money changing hands and the back end amount of money, i.e., through publishing and master rights, is huge. It's huge. It's interesting because pre-pandemic or a little bit further back, you made records and you released records to as a means of promoting you as a touring artist, but you didn't make money really through it. You only made money through your gigs and through live. But now catalog acquisition and building up labels and building up catalog and exploiting those catalogs, and by that I mean getting new remixes of the tracks that were the biggest tracks, putting out compilation albums that remind people of all the big tracks from the back catalog, just constantly reworking the back catalog. There's big business in that. And I think it's a new focus area, and I think that will continue to be the focus moving into the future. Catalog acquisition, the hard techno scene is the new EDM, and remixing old 90s classics.
And how much do you perceive artificial intelligence as being a threat, or even possibly have beneficial aspects to the music industry?
Very good question. We're using AI quite a bit at the moment to re-sing vocals. So if you take a sample of a vocal from a record, and now with AI you can grab any record, you can load it in to one of many different systems. The latest Logic has got a stem splitter in it. You put it in, you click split stems, and it'll give you the drums as one stem, it'll give you the vocals as one stem, and it's pretty fucking good, right? How this tech works, I've no idea. I never will, but I quite like the fact I can press one button and it does it, right? Yeah. So
it's all ones and zeros, basically.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah, but essentially. So I Will Atkinson, for example, will sample a record, and we get down to the stage where we can clear the publishing on the writer side, but we can't clear the master side, i.e. we can't clear the use of the
actual piece of music.
But what we can clear is the music itself, i.e. if we re-record it, then they'll give you permission to use it. So if you've, I don't know, for the sake of argument, this is not what it was, by the way, but I'm just using this as an example. Let's say you had a Beyonce vocal that they cleared the publishing on, very unlikely, not going to happen, but they cleared the publishing on. But on the other side, you couldn't clear use of the original vocal. You could just get AI to re-record in it. It would sound exactly like Beyonce, but it's not Beyonce. Yeah. And therefore, you've got your cover version of a new Beyonce record, which, as far as the general public is concerned, it is Beyonce, but it's not. And in that respect, going back to the first point, I think it's fucking dangerous. It's diluting art. It's making the possibility of an artist's work being butchered and cannibalized into billions of different forms that are no good and shit, flooding the internet. But I think it's too late to stop it. Yeah. So I think you either embrace it, nurture it, and try and direct it with a sense of obligation to the art of music. Yeah. But going up against it and saying, no, we can't do this, I think it's too late.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. No, it's a, stable door has, been well and truly open.
Yeah, true.
And it's, you can kind of imagine that there will be a time where it's so prevalent that you'll have people potentially listening to, dare I say, a John Askew track, and they might be thinking to themselves, I absolutely love this, but I don't think it's got enough country in it for me, you know, and they'll literally be able to
Yeah.
kind of like type in a prompt, you know, and they'll get a little, you know, and it will, as you say, you know, it will fracture and, you know, kind of split, you know, kind of would have been, you know, yeah, it's a,
You can't go up against it. You just got to try and, I don't know, you got to hope that people have a moral standpoint. I don't think they do. And also people are, there is a whole new generation of people making, not making full records, making 15-second to 30-second records specifically just for TikTok, right?
Yeah.
And if you are a major record label that holds the rights to the shit that they've ripped off, traditionally speaking, there would be a automatic, you know, algorithm or fingerprinting that would spot it and block it immediately.
Yeah.
But quite often now, the major record labels don't. They let it go to see whether it really fucking takes off and flies.
And they can capitalize on it.
And then they can come in and license it and claim all the royalties from it and say that's now ours. And actually, occasionally, officially release it. And there are loads of artists who have made a career based on one instance like that.
Yeah.
And now they're huge international touring artists.
So I can almost guess the answer to this question, but let's just throw it out there and see. When it happens, where are you playing your final gig?
Argentina.
Okay. Space. So Groove. Yeah.
One weekend, Mexico. One weekend, Manchester. One weekend, Mexico. One weekend, Buenos Aires.
So, looking forward, who are the new artists that you have an eye on or an ear on that you feel that are kind of? I mean, you mentioned Nifra, you know, earlier. Anybody else?
Zach Saloff from Mexico. He, for me, is the hottest producer in tech right now. I think he's absolutely amazing. There's another guy actually from Mexico again called Transvision, who's really fucking good. I mean, the guy is incredible. Not only is he incredible and the music's phenomenal, but anytime I ask him to do a remix or whatever, he turns it around in 24 hours. It's like, how's that possible? What are you doing? Maybe he's using AI. I don't know. No, I know he's not.
And to the John Askew level of satisfaction as well, which is
like, wow, this music is coming through. This would take me months to make, but those two are really good. He's not a new name, but I think David Forbes, who's, you know, very established and been around a very long time, I think he is having a huge moment at the moment, and quite right too, because his music is unbelievable. He's just, I would say in the last 2 to 3 years, just really found his groove, and his sound is, it's just unreal. Anytime I get a new record from him, I'm super excited. Those three I absolutely love. And obviously all the artists that I represent, Will and Simon, I just think their music, but they're not new, are they? Yeah, I'm going to say Zach Sloff and Transvision.
And David Forbes.
Yeah.
So are there anything else in and amongst all the things that you've done over the course of your career? Is there anything in the next 5 or 10 years that you, outside of all the other stuff you haven't done yet, that you have an eye on? I mean, a little birdie told me that you had a book in the works.
I have started writing a book, yeah. I started it well over 10 years ago, and
it's a time-consuming process.
Yeah, it is. So. And there are 3 fairly cohesive chapters in the middle of the book. I don't know where in the middle, but that's what I started writing. And then I've also written how the book ends. And then I've just not done anything with it since COVID.
Right. And broad area, is it kind of fiction, non-fiction, or what's
it's a mix of both. It's
based on real life events. Or?
Yeah, a lot of it is. But there is a lot of fiction in there as well. A lot of it's you know.
Is it the life and times of a DJ?
There is a manager and a DJ who play a central role, and there is the story flips between today, contemporary today, and, you know, and what's going on in between them. And then also it flips back and forward between that timeline and the manager's timeline when he was at school.
So it's kind of dual narrative.
Yeah. And while he was at school, he went to school following the death of both his parents. He's being brought up by a pretty hardcore uncle, and he's comes from a very broken background. And while at school, the headmaster sees him as a, like he really ought to be expelling him for all his bad behavior and stuff, but he is someone who comes from a military background and actually takes him under his wing and really nurtures him and gives him the skills to not only excel in life, but how to get revenge on people that fuck you over, right?
So it's a good old-fashioned grubby revenge novel.
It is, but and mixed into all of it are all the stories of on the road, some of which are mine, some of which are, Simon Patterson, some of which are stuff that happened during my time with Paul Oakenfold. It's a mix and match of a lot of different stuff. But when I do retire one day, that and
you'll have a beachhead.
Yeah,
which to kind of
it's there in my head. It's there. I just need to figure out how to cohesively put it all together. But there are 2 sections written, and that bit in the middle I really fucking like, and this ending is really good. But now I need to figure out how to put it together and then get a good editor. Perhaps you could do it for me.
I'll give it a go.
And I think it would be pretty explosive, but I think also a lot of people will work out who's who, even with aliases and alternative names, and that could be problematic.
You never know, John. By the time that you actually have had the moment to sit down and finish it up, let's say it's kind of like maybe 5 years or 10 years, no one's going to care anymore.
No.
It's probably going to be,
No.
and that'll be a boon as opposed to a drag.
Yeah, I think it'll be an entertaining read. With some highs and lows in more ways than one, and I'm keen to finish it, but I just don't have time. So what I hope to have is time. And also another thing I really would like to do is I would like to put on an annual boutique 1,000 people mini festival, ideally where I end up living. Move somewhere super remote that's picturesque and beautiful. And put
preferably a farm,
a farm or just a nice big plot of land somewhere, whether it's the lakes or the Brecon Beacons or North Devon or whatever, or just, that's what I would like to end up doing, and put on a really cool, intimate 1,000 people event once a year.
Awesome. Now, I know that social media is something that you have, a kind of fair degree of love and hate, with where are we going with that in relation to, yourself, the artist, the music industry, in a broader lens?
Well, in terms of myself, I have a TikTok account, but I've never done anything on it because I don't understand it. And I've sort of accepted now that I'm of an age where that's just not for me. And I think perhaps I've compromised advancing elements of my career by not embracing TikTok, but whatever, right? I like
only 24 hours in every day and all that.
Yeah, well, I like Instagram because I understand the platform. It's simple. I hate Facebook. They made it way too complicated with way too many buttons. There's like 25 different ways to do the same thing rather than just having one way. It's a ludicrous platform that's become way too complicated, and I fucking hate it. And it's a virtual dead zone anyway these days. Well, you say that, but there still seems to be some degree of interaction and trance has always had quite an older demographic in some respects, but I think from me as an artist, I'm fairly Instagram centric, and that's a platform I quite like, and from managing artists, I say it's important to do Instagram, TikTok, SoundCloud, whatever about Facebook. But from the perspective of the music industry, TikTok and SoundCloud are now absolutely fucking essential. And by that, I mean major record labels are just hovering over those two platforms to see what to sign. i.e., if something gets 500,000, 600, 700, a million streams on either of those two platforms, it shows up on their radar and they go after it. Meaning that they're looking for stuff where there is already a proven hunger to stream something, which means half their work's already done. It's like, instead of us trying to light a fire, let's find small fires that are already on fire and get them in and pour shitloads more fuel on them. That's the thing. So in the context of me managing artists, the important platforms are Instagram, actually in this order, TikTok, Instagram, SoundCloud. Right. Those three are fucking crucial. If you want to be a big artist and you want to make a go of it, those three platforms, you need to be all over them and you need to be doing them properly. And if you're not, well, you could end up like this.
Okay, so I'm going to read this question out in its fullest. So we're calling this part of the podcast A Look to the Future. Let's flip the script for a minute. Pretend it's 2024 and it's a look back at the past decade. What have you done with the last 10 years professionally?
Managed artists, run record labels, set up record labels, toured the world as an artist, released a shitload of records that I produced in the studio.
Finished the book?
So hang on. You mean 10 years in the future?
Yeah.
Right, so 10 years in the future, I hope to be retired, but playing maybe 10 gigs a year.
So pretend retired.
Pretend retired. Living somewhere remote with a sensational recording studio with a spectacular view. I want my daily routine to be getting up in the morning, taking my dog for a long walk with my wife and or dogs maybe, have more, and then come back and spend the rest of the day in the studio making tunes, signing music, releasing music on a label, and then just playing, leaving there to play 10 shows and, maybe less actually, maybe 6 or 7 shows, playing all night long.
8-hour sets.
8-hour sets. And then other than that, one weekend a month, family or friends coming to stay with us. One weekend every 6 weeks going and traveling. And
the once a year, 1,000 people.
Once a year boutique festival. And other than that, spending a lot of time, just chilling. Listening to music. I don't have enough time to listen to music. And that's appalling. Maybe writing books, maybe writing more than this one book.
That sounds like as good a vision as imaginable.
Fingers crossed.